As school leaders, whatever role that we're in, we need to identify and address the mental health needs of our stakeholders, both responsibly and proactively.
Let's get started on today's Pearl of Wisdom. I wrote a little intro for Sue Easton. It's kind of hard to read it because we're so, we worked together so closely for so many years. And Sue is currently the Director of Wellbeing and Learning. I think she might be the only person in the international schools world with that title. And it so fits her, the Director of Wellbeing and Learning at Ridley College in Canada. And she served in many capacities at international schools in Spain, Malaysia, Brazil. And then we were really fortunate to have Sue with us for a few precious years as the director of the TTC, the TLI, and the CTC. And under her leadership of those, great advancements were made. And Sue's been a long-time course facilitator for us at the PTC, where she teaches the Creating an Effective School course, and for the TTC and for TLI. And I can't even list all the courses that she teaches there because she's basically taught most of them or all of them, right? And Sue, I hope that you know that you are just an invaluable part of the fabric of who we are at the PTC, TTC, and all the other programs. And we're really grateful for you being with us today. Over to you.
Abby, thanks for the kind words. It is so wonderful to see so many faces. I have to tell you, you are looking way too good for having had 3 months in isolation. Tomorrow is my hair day, unfortunately, so you have to bear with me the way that I am. I'm going to share my screen with you because I have a presentation, and I want to talk through my Pearl with you that I'm hoping will be useful for you. As Bambi said, you've had some amazing pearls already in the past 9 days. The ones that stood out to me because they really connected with my message was the one about the change process and really understanding how change works so that you can support the people that you are leading through that change process. The power of vulnerability as a leader, absolutely important. And Brene Brown's work, if you haven't looked at it, is really worth looking at. And just being an empathetic leader and how important that is. So I had those in my head as I really thought about what's an important message that all of you need to hear during this time. Because we are returning to an uncertain future when we go back to school, and we really need to be prepared to meet our community's needs. So when I named the Pearl Wellness for All, I was really thinking about this continuum that we refer to in positive psychology. And my role as Director of Wellbeing and Learning is really focused on positive psychology at Ridley College. So the focus, instead of being on mental illness, is about illness and wellness in regards to our mental health is a continuum, and that our focus in school, if we are being responsive, is on the illness part, but on the wellness part, there is so much that we can do. Another way to look at it, I really love this chart, but it talks about on the right-hand side, all of the components of low mental illness. So at the top, you've got high mental health. So you may be flourishing, but you may actually be flourishing even with mental illness. So the left-hand side is the high mental illness. So our work, the work that we as leaders need to do, is whether we have kids or adults who have mental illness or not, we need to focus on how can we support them in their flourishing. And the message that I want you to walk away with is well-being is something that we do, not just something that we have. And at the school that I'm currently at, as I said, we focus on positive psychology, and we've actually adopted the work of the founder of positive psychology, which is Martin Seligman, and he identified the first 5 of this Perma V, the first 5 components that he researched, that if we ensure that we are working strategically as humans on building positive emotions, engagement, relationships, meaning, and achievement, that we will move to a greater area of flourishing or well-being. One of his students, Amelia Zivatovskaya from the Flourishing Center, that I would highly recommend, she added on vitality, which is all about eating right, moving every day, and sleeping as well. So I'm framing the pearl that I want to share with you around Perma V. Some of you may not use the term positive education or positive psychology. You may in your schools talk about character education or social emotional learning or value education or some other term. But many of our schools are now really recognizing how absolutely vital it is for us not only to work on academics, but also to work on what we call positive education. When I was thinking about this pearl, I took a look at our PTC standards for the International School Principal, and the one that I want to focus on is our work as improving the culture and climate through our leadership. So the pearl that I want to talk about is this. As school leaders, whatever role that we're in, we need to identify and address the mental health needs of our stakeholders, both responsively and proactively. So to talk about this pearl, I want to share two very practical strategies with you. The first one is I want to talk about collecting and analyzing data about the well-being or the flourishing of our students, our staff, and our parent community. And the second strategy I want to talk about is how do you create both a responsive plan and a proactive plan based on the data. So for collecting and analyzing the data, I want to share two resources with you. At the school that I'm currently at, we've just adopted an app that's called Flourishing at School. And Flourishing at School, kids can have on their phone, and it has two components. It has a survey that kids do about every 6 weeks that actually gives us data on how they are doing in relation to each component of Perma V that our school has adopted. Fantastic information for us because we can see, do they have a lot of positive emotions, a lot of negative emotions? Are they feeling like they're belonging in the community? Are they feeling like they don't have relationships in place? A lot of data that we can make decisions from. The second tool that I would recommend to you is called AWE, or Assessing Wellbeing in Schools, and both of those are linked when you get the resource. And this one's great to use once a year. They use all kinds of different surveys within it, including a flourishing survey, and it is fantastic long-term data to make decisions, programmatic decisions of things that you want to do long-term at your school. And of course, many of us have, well, everybody here would have an accreditation process and would have school climate surveys that are attached to that. And I really recommend that that's a way to collect data from the parents, not only on how they are doing in regards to well-being, but also in regards to what do they think are the concerns for their children that we may need to help them with. So for the collecting and analyzing data, those are 3 resources for you. You may have other resources or tools that you use, but it's absolutely vital that we figure out, especially during this difficult time that we are entering back into when we start school with kids who've been at home, some of them thriving with remote learning and really stressed about going back to school, and other kids who have really struggled and are so excited about going back to a back that is not the same as what they're remembering. So it's really important that we collect that data and that we analyze it. But of course, the key with data is also what do you do with it? So creating responsive and proactive plans based on the data are absolutely vital. So for students, the responsive part is if we find something in the data that we've collected that is of concern, then we need to have a plan in place to support those kids. So an example would be for that Flourishing at School app, we look at the data, and if we determine that there are some concerns, so for example, a kid who has really high negative emotions and next to no positive emotions, and we have specific data points that we're looking at, then there is a process. So first process is the advisor makes contact with the student and talks to them to see, was this a moment, a snapshot in time? Are they really struggling? Do they need some strategies, some resources? If the advisor thinks that it needs to go beyond that, we're a boarding school, so it may go to the head of house, or it may go directly to our counselor, our mental health counselor, to actually meet with the student. So having a very step-by-step responsive pastoral care plan in response to the data that you collect is really important heading forward. But for all stakeholders, for students, staff, and for parents, we can have a proactive learning plan before we even start the year, and then make tweaks to it based on the data. So for us, we've decided for next year that our focus is going to be on resilience. So we are going to be teaching our students, our staff, and our parents strategies and practices specifically related to this resilience focus. So that might be coping strategies, it might be emotional management, it might be optimism and gratitude. We have some very specific strategies that through our advisory program, we actually are starting, instead of camp, because we can't go to camp this year, ROAR, it's Ridley Outdoors Activity Retreat, and it gives us an opportunity to start with some practices with the kids, with the older ones, making sure that they understand the research so that everybody is getting a common message. Teachers know so that they can support the students, students learn the strategies, and we offer all kinds of things for parents, whether it is a bi-weekly blog or whether we do parent workshops for them as well. So this whole learning plan in regards to resilience can be done in advance, but once we get our data, if we realize that there are more issues or concerns, then we will tweak our plan based on that. So again, the pearl was, as school leaders, we need to identify and address the mental health needs of our stakeholders, both responsively and proactively. And I did leave you a slide with some, for me, what I think are some of the best resources that I've used in regards to positive education, which are gozen.com, which has a whole adult learning section, but it also has both free and ones that you can purchase, resources on things ranging from how do you support kids with anxiety, to depression, to how to use their strengths, all kinds of different things. I can't speak highly enough about gozen.com. Viacharacter.org has surveys for both kids and adults to assess what their character strengths are. So we flip it from, again, that mental illness to the mental health. What are our strengths and how can we use them so that we can develop our resilience or whatever else we're working to develop? Dr. Lee Waters worked with our school for a long time, and her Visible Wellbeing program is just chock full of practical practices, resources, activities to use with kids. TheFlourishingCenter.com. The Flourishing Center has certificate programs for teachers that are so practical and so infused with research. And finally, if you're just looking for something for a good read this summer, The Basis of Positive Psychology was from Dr. Martin Seligman, and his original book, Flourish, would be something I would recommend. Long-winded to say, really hoping that you move forward as leaders and support the mental health of your community. And I'm going to stop sharing right now.
Excellent. So we need another few hours with you, Sue, to kind of unfold, right, everybody? We feel like we could really carry on. It's so relevant and critical at this point. We do have some questions, Sue, so are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, the first question is, any tips for when you've been focusing on everyone's well-being and giving positive reinforcement for staff, and then still they are demotivated and resistant, and this starts to affect your own resilience?
Two parts to that question, right? How do you continue the work when you're not getting anything back? And the second part is, how do you focus on your own well-being? The sort of mecca of positive education is Geelong Grammar School in Australia, and their model is learn, live, teach, embed. And so the idea is that if as adults we aren't learning and living it ourselves, then really we can't teach and embed it so that it is effective for kids. So my thought, even though those are two questions, is start with yourself and really focus on what are the strategies that you are working on for yourself. And if there were two that I would recommend, number one would be have some sort of mindfulness practice infused into your life. I love this idea of just give yourself a 7-day challenge. Start with a 1 minute meditation. On day 2, do 2 minutes. Day 3, do 3 minutes. Give yourself that gift of time and space and being in the moment. And if I gave you a second one, it would be gratitude. And right now, really thinking about in this difficult time, what can we be grateful for? And starting each day with 3 things that you're grateful for. And that will help you with your mindset. And as your mindset grows, then hopefully that will give you the space to continue the work with the people who may not see the value in it right now, but if you continue with the message and you continue giving the opportunities, I am fully in the belief that people will come along with you in their own time. And that goes back to the pearl about change. They're not all going to come with you right away. They will come in their own time.
Yes, and we have many of the pearls, whatever the topic has been, we always have that issue to come back to is and say, yeah, well, what if that doesn't work for everybody at the same rate and all of that? So those are, you can't separate out, here's one pearl and it's disconnected from the rest of the string, so that's really helpful. We still have a bunch of more questions, so let's try to, I'm going to ask this one. What school structures and processes are best to use to collaboratively process the data? You mentioned advisors, counselors, others, ? Specific groups of people or professional groups within the school. So we often talk about the structures and processes needed to support whatever the ultimate vision and, plan is.
Yeah. In the course that we are missing right now, Creating Effective Schools, we actually talk specifically about the use of data protocols. Data protocol, first of all, is ideal because it separates the emotion. It's not the data about you and the effect that you have had on a child's learning or on a child's well-being, but it actually just makes us look specifically at the most simple one is, what does it say? What does it mean? What do we do? And the what does it say, ideally the structure would be that somebody, in many cases you as the leader, takes the data and puts it into manageable form of what are the facts that are in the data, so that everyone is not looking at the raw data. That is not a good use of time. But the second question, the what does it mean? What questions do we have? What do we know about the kids? What do we know about the information behind this data? Was it if there's a specific child that you're looking at, did something happen in their life that may have affected this moment's data? But the most important question is the what do we do? And that I see all the structures that you already have in place in your school. So it might be your advisors. I like doing it with full faculty groups because then you can have different table groups. Of course, we won't be necessarily in tables next year, but at least virtually having groups of teachers together looking at the facts, the what does it say, what does it mean, and then actually creating a plan. And it might not be the same plan as the table beside, but creating a plan of what are we going to do with this data moving forward. Again, within the structure of this is our pastoral care program, these are the steps that we follow. If a kid or a group of kids are at this level, then this is the action that we're going to do, which might be share resources, which might be start a mindfulness group, which might be they need to talk to a counselor. Okay. Don't know if that answers both of those.
Well, we have it all on video, so we'll go back and check it out. Okay. Yeah, and as with all of these, the idea that who's at the table, I think also matters. And so, in another time and space, who are the right people, not the bad people or good people, but people who are right people to be at that table to have that conversation. And there would be in this area of who knows, what is a fact? What is a fact when it comes to someone's disposition or approach, etc. We have another question that's asking, are you working on integrating SEL into academic subjects? And you talked about the pastoral care program, so I thought that might be a good kind of segue into what does that look like, or what's the connection
So
to
the
the...
vision at the school that I'm currently at is to inspire flourishing lives to transform the globe. So the word flourishing is defined by us as Perma V. So that means that everything we do needs to incorporate this Perma V into it. So yes, the explicit teaching of strategies and practices to students may be during advisory, but the expectation that teachers are using the strategies within their academic program, that is something that we are now currently working on. And again, we've taken a step back because being virtual, we weren't necessarily teaching the practices, we were using the practices with the kids constantly, from a check-in at the beginning of every class, how are you feeling, and lots of different ways that you could do that. We have one teacher who has a cube, and so the color expresses the way that the kids are feeling, and they would put it on their desk, or virtually they would hold it up to the younger kids having the happy face, etc. So incorporated into the beginning of classes. And then one of the things from positive education, and I'm sure from social emotional learning as well, is about brain breaks, the importance for kids to be able to digest, reflect, and that is an expectation in all of our classes. So is it part of learning about science? Not at this point, though I think that when we're sharing the research with kids, it certainly could be included in our science classes, our psychology classes, our philosophy classes. But at this point, it's more as part of the structure of our classes than the content of our classes.
Excellent. Next question. What is the advantage of using this app rather than your own survey? We had interesting data from simple Google surveys during our own lockdown. So, how has this tool helped you to move forward? One of the tools that you talked about.
Great. So the Flourishing at School app, I think there are two things that are really strong about it. So the one is that the kids can use it. They could literally use it without having any interaction with us, because when they do the survey results are given to them in pictorial form with recommendations of resources and activities that they could do to boost their own flourishing. So that is a real strength right in the app. And then we can look behind the scenes to see specifically, and it looks like a spider web, but it shows what's in the range of norm, what is below the range of norm, and above in each area, which is food for such rich thought. In addition to that, there's a daily well-being check that you can have kids do, and that's what our plan is when we go back to school. And the well-being check is 3 parts. Really quick, just what's the emoji of how you're feeling. So we're seeing this every day over time. So again, that longitudinal data to make decisions. The second piece is they have to identify why they're feeling that way, so that they can look back and say, oh, every time I am with that friend, I come away feeling bad, and they can start to advocate for themselves. And the third piece is there's a little journal for them. So again, that they can go back and look at how they're feeling over a period of days, and we can look over and to see, is there something that we need to be concerned about? So I really like the app. I would highly recommend it.
Yeah, thank you for that, because we are always looking for that really practical thing that can take the idea to the level where it's really impacting kids. We do have a bunch of other questions. We're not going to have time to do those today. We have people asking about young children. We have, one related to a particular thing, loss of students or loss of teachers. We will put all of these questions into our shared document, and then maybe, Sue, you can get in there and write in some answers for us. And we've kind of left it open as a shared, everybody can come in and put their thoughts in, as long as you put your initials after it, so we kind of know who you are, and we can all kind of sort of respond. We'll see if that continues to work. We've got lots of people, sort of hundreds, so we'll see whether that actually works or not. So, Sue, thank you so much. I think everybody, we can see from the chat that many of you are feeling really positive about this notion of how we move forward with positive education and what it's contributing to the body of learning about being a leader in an international school. So thank you, thank you, thank you. As always, inspiring.